and it's beginning now. Just to remind you that if you are going to turn your camera on or you're going to unmute your mic, which you're welcome to do either, you will be recorded and this video will be popped onto the Turn It On YouTube channel and made public. If you've got any questions you want to ask and you don't want to speak over the mic, you can always pop them into the chat and I will pick them up from there when I come back. Today is a slightly shorter session because we've had this week the Showcase School event yesterday, and I know some people attended that and others didn't. Showcase School, it was extremely useful. We had insights into Downhouse School and how they have adopted the use of Office 365, the wider Microsoft 365, and also devices. If you want to watch any of that back, Tiana will be posting the links for those videos into the Teams, so you can pick up the links from there. But if you did attend, as a follow-up to that, Hable, who are organising the event, will send out the video links directly to you, and on there will be the materials that you've got from the presentation decks if the person that was presenting is willing to share those presentation decks. So either you can pick them up from our team, once we get sent the links they can go in there, or you'll get them directly in your inbox from a follow-up email from Hable that we're organising it. Mark, good to see you found it interesting there. The teacher-led sessions, I think, are always the best part of the day. That very open and honest approach, just how they're talking freely about their experiences, I always find the most insightful, especially if I'm trying to plan something new at a school, or I would have been a teacher in school trying to work out how on earth do I do all of this too. So if you've got anything from yesterday that you want to discuss as well, I'm more than happy to talk it through. I was in most of those sessions, and like you, I think the teacher-led bits were probably the most. And also at the end, the accessibility session from Microsoft, I found very useful with Hector as well. So there were lots of good points in that day, and it's worth watching it back when the recordings come through too. So today is going to be a bit of a blend as usual. We are going to look at how to create engaging presentations and alternatives to PowerPoint. We're also going to look at data collection and analysis. We'll start off with the application yourself. We previously gave you a code to log in the Microsoft Education Center. That would have allocated you 1,000 points. So instantly you would be a certified MIE, and if you're a certified MIE, that is step one in putting in your application to become an MIEE, a Microsoft Innovative Educator. The application itself can take the form of a 2-minute video or a sway. If you still haven't redeemed that code or you missed that code, it's in the Teams, it's in the previous slide decks and recordings as well if you want to go pick it up. But you go to Microsoft Education Center, you sign in the top right hand corner. If you haven't created yourself an account yet, it's really painless to do. Click your initials where the sign in button is, and then there's a box there that says redeem code. You pop in the one that we've given you and you're instantly credited with that. We're very much aware that you're still very busy. Schools are under immense amounts of pressure, and if we can save you the process of completing a couple of courses, that's why we gave you the code. So once you've got on the left there your certified MIE status, you'll be on your way to becoming an MIEE, and then that application is absolutely key. We are still focusing today on creating that accessible learning, and I know that was very much a theme of yesterday in the afternoon on the Showcase School session, making that engaging so that it draws students and pupils in, but also making sure at the same time that we reduce the workloads upon teachers as far as we possibly can. And that's one of the things that I find is been really helpful from starting to use Microsoft technologies, is that I found sneaky little ways to streamline things that I used to have to do by hand that were very time consuming, and now I've got technology that can do some of that heavy lifting for me. I had a couple of questions come in on the MIEE Teams, and there were questions around the portal where you pop in your MIEE application, the 4 questions that are on there versus the 4 questions that we look at in these sessions. The 4 questions that are on the MIEE portal where you submit your final application, they're focused around how you're using the technologies that we're showing you, things like the Teams, the OneNote class notebook, the accessibility tools, today the Sway and the Microsoft Form applications, and it wants to know how you're harnessing those and either incorporating them into your own practice or getting them rolled out across the wider school. You need to link those 4 questions on the portal with the 4 questions that we're covering here and have covered in previous sessions about why you consider yourself to be an MIEE, what are the qualities you possess, how are you working in describing you. That's the opening paragraph we looked at in the MIEE guest speaker session that we had last week with Nick. Then the incorporating technologies question 2 here covers a vast amount of the 4 questions. It's on the website portal, so it's really key that you do spend some time picking out the certain technology that you've used in your school. Then the question 3 also cross-links with the questions on the portal, but that's how you are branching out beyond your practice and starting to reach out across maybe people in your department or your school. And we're going to spend a bit of time now looking at what that is. And then question 4 is where you're going to take it next. So your future plans, what are your aspirations? How are you going to really make sure that digital transformation isn't a one-year thing and it has longevity to still be occurring in 2-3 years time? And that's really important where the educational transformation framework comes in from Microsoft, because it supports you in planning that and making sure that everyone understands the direction of travel. We're going to come back to question 3 at the moment. This impacting learning and growth of your colleagues. That might be their own professional practice. It might be that you've introduced somebody to OneNote and all they've done is they've decided to stop using a paper book and they've started keeping all of their notes and their planning and organization in OneNote. If that's what's happened, record it, share it in your application. It could be more far-reaching that you've gone to the leadership team after running a trial with a couple of teachers in the subject or in your primary school year group, and you've adopted maybe using OneNote class notebook in the classroom. We've started using assignments, setting homeworks every so often. And the leadership team are interested in maybe rolling that across the school or asking you to become digital leaders to go and share that with other people in the school. So all of that is evidence that you need to make sure you've captured and you've incorporated into your Sway application or your 2-minute video. If it's your Sway application, you can do that through screenshots or evidencing other files. It can be opened up in a Sway. If you're capturing it in a video, make sure that you probably are delivering that video through something that can deliver screen sharing, so you can pop up on the screen just exactly what you've done, examples of it, stills, pictures, however you want to evidence it, but make sure you're dropping in lots of illustrated examples. Drive that message home over and over again about how you've been achieving that. So if you are just in the early stages, you'll be initiating, and that's you thinking about what you're going to do to reach beyond your classroom, who you might coach, support or mentor, and how it's going to help their growth and development. If you're at the developing stage, it means that you've reached out to some colleagues. 1 or 2 is absolutely fine, and you're starting to work with them and you really got involved with helping them grow and adopt technologies. If you are advancing, it means you're showing some innovation where maybe you're going just beyond a couple of colleagues. You might be, as I said, if you're in a secondary, go across subjects in the school. If you are in a primary school, you might have gone across Key Stage 2 or Key Stage 1 team, and you started to share that wider, more than just the people that you immediately work with. And leading might be that you have been given that digital leader responsibility. Certainly, I know that was a theme that came up yesterday about digital ambassadors as students and pupils. That helps to provide capacity, and pupils and students will more readily listen to their peers than they will their teachers, and it seems to sink in. Whereas you're going to need that also in the staff to make sure that that momentum isn't lost and that transformation continues. So question 3 is quite a key question, and the weighting for that when you come to the final assessment is that's going to be 30%. Now question 2 is 50%, but between question 2 and 3, that's where the majority of your focus needs to be, and it's also where the majority of your explanation and evidence needs to be. So incorporate lots of technologies, lots of developing you, lots of reaching out to colleagues and supporting their development, and if you can, anything that's impacted across the wider school for the transformation that you may have helped to take place. The timeframes haven't changed. We met with Jen King last week, and she was really insistent that I told you that your application absolutely has to be in on the 15th of July. If it's any later than that, that portal locks, and there is no special exceptions for your application going in afterwards. It's worth beginning to build that or do a test run of the recording in advance so that you don't find technology is the thing that trips you up if you are somebody who has the tendency to leave things to the last minute, or you know that you get extremely busy and buried in everything from school and your responsibilities there. So do plan it, do pencil some time into your diary and make sure that you put it together in a way that gives a really meaningful insight into what you've achieved and why you should be accredited as an MIEE this year. Before I go into today's session, are there any questions around the application itself or anything that you'd like to ask in relation to it? Nope. Okay, I'll move on, but at the end of the session, if you've got anything else that you'd like to ask, I'm more than happy to discuss it with you and answer any questions that you may have. Today, then, we are going to look at two more technologies that you can incorporate into your practice or introduce to colleagues that you work with in the school. The first one's going to be Microsoft Forms and then Sway. In fact, we might do that the other way around, but we'll go through. We're going to have a look at the different features in forms, different types of forms available to you, how that allows you to gather in data, but then more importantly, how you can do something meaningful with it and analyze the data, but also collaborate with others. And in Sway, we are going to look at alternative ways of making presentations, and that will change depending on the audience you're trying to reach. Again, Sway's allow collaboration. But as we're going through, I'll pause in between so you can ask more questions. So let's start off with forms. And then forms, there are two types of forms. You're either going to get a quiz or a form itself. One would be more classroom orientated. As we go through, I'll show you some features that are more pro, and I'll also discuss Forms Pro, which means that you need a higher license. But if you start to become a heavy user of Forms, it might be something you're interested in. And I'll show you just how to do that, sharing, and also discuss how it fits into other applications. And I know we've previously looked at, for instance, inserting a form into a OneNote class notebook, and that's an easy thing to achieve. And then we'll come back to do Sway presentations afterwards. So I am just going to swap over screens and nip into the web browser that I've got open. So it should sync through in just a tick, and you'll see the Office 365 landing page. Let's nip over to Forms. So Forms itself is quite a basic layout. You'll have the thumbnails here where you can see the forms, and up the top that will allow you to start a new quiz. Quiz is something you will use with pupils or students in classroom focus. If you want to make a form itself for data collection, then new form is there on the drop down menu. As well as them appearing there, you can scroll down, and these are the ones that are more recently used. If you're using a form regularly for some reason, you can pin it so you don't have to go rifling through. Or if somebody's shared a form with you, it will sit in a list here. So you've got a way of organizing them. If you don't wish to have them as thumbnails and you're more of a list person, you can swap over. But you'll lose that preview element and you'll just see them there on their own. So you can choose either way. As I said, that won't be all of your forms. You want to see every form you've got, you need to nip over here to all forms, and then they'll be listed in full. You can go back to here to the recently used ones. Very often the ones that you've been using last are there, and you don't need to go rifling through. The links to other applications are key here. Microsoft Form and Teams are best friends, and you can insert forms in there, just like you can insert forms into Sways as well. Let's go and have a look then at a parental device survey that I've created. So this would be an example of a form for data collection, and what we've got here, we've moved past providing distance learning. We might have a little bit of hybrid learning going on. We've still got a minority of pupils or students that are still remotely working, but the majority of pupils and students are now back in school with us. And what we're looking at is how to harness some of the features we were using in Teams, but here now into bringing it back into school life. So we want to know what are the devices that people have at home. We may know this from during lockdown, but we may not be sure. It may have changed because they've purchased it. We also want to know about if they've got any what sort of limitations they might have around their broadband, and how likely they are to use Teams from their experiences there. If I click on this is the editing view as you would see it from making a form. Here is the title, and all I've done is I clicked on that box and I've popped a picture in. And then underneath you've got a subtitle where I've just given a little bit more clarification as to why this person may have received this form and what I'm expecting to put into it. Here are the questions. So here's an example of a multiple choice question. You can have multiple choice, so you can have just a single answer and you'll get a round box on the left of the answers. But if you like to get more than one answer, you can slide across multiple answers and then people can toggle on more than one. What devices do you have at home? Here is an example of where you can insert media. Now, the great thing about forms and in fact Sway is that you don't have to go outside. So when I click the button there, I can either add in an image or a video. So in the header, I'd add an image. Let's see if I can add a video in here. Right inside of Forms, I've got a web browser linking. It's powered by Bing and it's like a mini web browser. But again, if you're using this for pupils to build forms, then they don't get distracted by going elsewhere. It all happens in here. So let's put learning devices and see what we get. Nope. It's not going to bring me one in. It's going to say want me to add a URL there. All right, I'll go in here and do that and find a URL in a bit. So let's put learning devices. If I spell learning, it might help as well. And it might be that I like that picture there, so I'm going to tick it, press add, and in it comes. If I did want to have that video, I could go here and go school learning devices. And then I might go to the videos over here, and then from this I could pick up that video there, get the URL from it, and then take the URL and embed it in. So you just copy the URL from the top and you embed it into the Sway or the form. Nipping back over, I've now got my picture, makes it stand out a bit more, and then down here I've just pressed add new and insert a question type. Today we won't cover absolutely every feature in Forms, but we will get you started. So if I go to add new and I wanted to add another question in here, this is where I get my choices. So that's an example of multiple choice. Text is where I ask people to explain their answer, and you get a box you can type into. You can ask somebody to put a date in, and down here you could rank things, or you can use what's called a net promoter score, which gives you like a dashboard with a dial. So I might say, look, I'm going to use a rating question, and so how would you feel about pupil homework being sent Teams? And then the parent can go in here and they can say, please show your preference by rating. You could choose the symbol that you want in the levels. So I think what I'll do is I'll make that out of 10. And instead of stars, I might have a number, because actually it's not whether I like it or not. It's out of 10 there. And I might just add some clarification. One equals, let's say, not likely. 10 equals highly likely. And with all that there, I'm going to make it a required question, which means the person can't submit this form without answering that question. Here, I have got a subtitle on, and that's where I've written the extra description. I can add a label to 1 to 10. So if I didn't want to write it there, I could enter not likely and likely there if I want it in the above the numbers, or I can include it in the subtitle. So I might turn that off. and the branching will come to when we look at quizzes. So that's how it looks for me from the side of editing it, but I might want to check how it looks from the other perspective. I've already taken the liberty of adding a theme in here, but it's as quick as clicking one of these boxes, or you can press the plus button. You can add in your own image to go in the background and then choose the color to contrast with it. If I preview it, this is how it will look on a computer. You'll see here from yesterday's showcase event and my last MIE event, Immersive Reader's built right in, so it doesn't have to be a barrier that you can't get to the survey because the text is either a level that you can't understand, or maybe it's in the language you want. I'll show you in a little bit how you add in other languages, but here imagine that I'm working in an international school and maybe I've got German-speaking parents and I've also got French-speaking parents. They can toggle this into their own language and it will convert it over, and they can move it backwards and forwards. Here then I've got my form to answer, so I might say at home I've got a tablet and a mobile phone. I might explain limitations for broadband, let's say still waiting for fibre. We haven't got fast broadband yet. How like using Microsoft Teams, I might say a 7. How am I going to feel about assignments being set through? I'm not so happy. I quite like the paper form, and I'm going to submit it. And then you can also customize that message there to saying, thank you very much for submitting your survey response. We will let you know the outcome after all parents have submitted their responses. You can also view this on a mobile view. So this is what it looks like on a mobile, and Forms will automatically rescale what you've got in there to suit the content that you've added in. So if I come back to here, this is the questions tab, and over here is the responses tab. What I get then is a dashboard of the responses and a breakdown. So here you see a pie chart of the responses. I've also got the numbers over there. I can hover over each one individually. Then down here are all the written responses that have come back in. This is an example of a net promoter score where you've got a dial rating exactly how people feel about it. So at the moment, that's not looking so healthy. So I might need to consider that. And then assignments through Teams, it tells me that I've only got one response there, and I can see some more details if I want. And it will allow me then to see the response by rating. If I don't want to keep it in here, I can export it to Excel to crunch it further still, and that allows more analysis. And additionally, if I don't want to see a summary version, if I press view results, I can get to each individual person and I can see how long it took them to complete, what their individual answers were, and that might mean I need to go back and respond to them. There was an anonymous response there and another anonymous response there. So that gives me some insight into the data that's coming in and allows me to effectively analyze it and make a decision from the data that I have. That is a form for data collection. Most of the time you might use those with parents, staff. You can use them in lessons as well. So if I'm not using a quiz to check learning, I might be delivering a science lesson and we're doing a inquiry that involves data collection, let's say, maybe around heights in the class or feet sizes or something like that. What you could do is you can get pupils or students to design a survey for data collection relating to science or maths. They can make that and then share it with the class. So the beauty of forms is that you could share it just as a form on its own, or as I said, you could put the link into Teams. But if you press the share button, here at the moment, I've got this on anyone can respond because I intend for this form to be used externally to my school. But I might want to limit it, and to make it safe, if anyone happened to get that link, I might say only people in my organisation, or I could even lock it down further saying there's only specific people I want to name, and you might name the pupils in your class. But at the moment, I'm going to leave this one because it's meant for parents to anyone can respond. You can get a shorter URL if you want, so it's not quite long and bulky. All you do is copy it then and you paste it into the location, whether it's posts in Teams or it's in an assignment link if it's in the instructions of what you want them to answer. It could be practically anywhere. Throw it into a OneNote class notebook, an email, Word document. The other option is to get a QR code, and QR codes are quite helpful. I've seen a couple of primary schools recently printing those out and sticking them on the inside of the reception window, and then the parent can walk up outside, hold their mobile phone camera up to it, and this form just opens in the web browser on their device. They haven't got to worry about typing in a URL or finding it to click. It's there. I do that a lot in classroom as well to make pupils independent in learning. So if you have got camera-enabled laptops or tablet devices, they can just scan the QR code on the notice board in different areas of the classroom, and then it will take them straight to the form that you want them to complete. Another option, a lot of websites from educational companies now allow you to embed Microsoft Forms, so you can host it in the website itself. Here it tells you how many pixels high by how many pixels wide you want it to be. All you do is you change the numbers, then copy the link, and you embed that in the website. Or you can email it directly to someone by pressing the email button, and it will open up something like Outlook, and then it will send a single copy to a single person, unless you're going to BCC it to a lot of people. So that's the way to get it for collecting responses, but it also allows you to share the template. So maybe you are one of 2 year 4 teachers in a primary school, you know, you're both going to do this in science lesson, and this wasn't devices, this, as I said, was something about data for science. Well, then you could send that over, and you could then get your colleague to pick up the form and modify it a bit for their class. You don't lose your original, but you've saved your colleague some work in creating it from scratch. If you both want to author it together and you're doing some joint planning, you can send someone the share link, and then you'll both appear in this editing view, and you can make changes live in real time. So you don't need to have separate copies and then send them backwards and forwards as templates. So quite a bit of scope with sharing. I said I would talk to you about how to get those language options in there. So if you go to multilingual, in here, my primary language is English, and it's picking that up from my settings in Office 365. If I want to add another language in, all I do is press that button, and I scroll up and down the languages that are available to me, and I lock it in, and then it's one of the drop-down options when I go to view the form when I send it to somebody. So the form itself is as straightforward as that. Very quick and easy and user-friendly to build, and not something that you should be worried about breaking. I would say at first just have a go with sticking in a few of each question just to get a feel for what they look like, but it doesn't have to be something that's cumbersome or hard to use. I find it one of the most simple and useful applications in the Office 365 apps that you've got available to you. One of the other things might be having a class quiz, and you would use this with pupils and students to collect either understanding of how secure the learning was at the end of a section of work. Maybe it's testing at the beginning to know just how secure prior learning was. It might be just a bit of homework. The advantage again here is that, yes, you do have to invest some time in building it, but once you've got it, you can use it year after year. But at the same time, it's one of those things where you've got the marking done for you. Forms will mark, and as you can see in a minute, you'll be able to direct pupils or students off to additional learning from inside this quiz here. So I've given it a title. If I click on it there, I've just popped in the logo from Turn It On. My quiz here is all about STEM subjects in school, and I've got a couple of questions that I've made already. So the first one is about maths and angles, and you denote what the correct answer here is by ticking on the side. So if it was less than 90 degrees, I'd tick it there. If it's greater than 90 degrees, I tick it there. And then this box under here I've got by ticking the display message when they answer. So it might be that they've answered that, and I want to branch them out to something outside of form. So you can say, now go and have the bite-size activity, and you can have the click here and there, and you can add a URL in, and then it would take them straight off to the correct page in BBC Bite-Size Maths, and they could have a go at an angles exercise as an extension activity. Or if they got it wrong, you could use that as a reverse scenario. Okay, I see you need a bit more practice on this. Go away and try this activity and come back and try again. So it doesn't have to be that the form keeps you in the Microsoft world. It can link out to all those other platforms that you might subscribe to, whether they are free or whether they're paid for. Here we've got the required, and I've left the multiple answers off this time because it's only one or the other, and that's why we got the round box instead of the square box we looked at in the device survey form. Useful options in the 3 dots on the side. Shuffle options I use all the time in class quizzes. It means they'll get the questions in different orders, and that stops them looking over each other's shoulders and copying what the other one's doing. Drop downs, you can have drop down menus instead of seeing a list of options to click, and then you pick the one from the drop down menu. You can add a subtitle and you can add branching. Now, at the top of this quiz, there was a symbol here, and that means that branching is active. And if I went into add branching, it doesn't have to mean that I go through the form in a linear way. So here in question 1, it says if it says less than 90 degrees, it might be go to the next question. But if it was greater than 90 degrees, I'm going to skip what is actually question 2 in my class quiz, and I'm going to go straight to question 3. So you can change the flow that the student and pupil experiences based on their previous answers. And if something in the next question means that it's not really going to be of use to them because their knowledge is secure, then you skip them through to the next one. Don't have to use branching, but it is useful sometimes. Once you've got it all in there, you simply press the back button, and then that branching is locked in, and then that flow through the form will be sorted as far as they are concerned. So question 2, I've got an algorithm here for coding. Looks like it's from scratch or something, and what I want them to do is explain what the algorithm is actually telling me. So I've chosen a long answer question there, and I've used a picture of a coding algorithm here. Then we're moving into more of a science. So we're looking at energy transfers and moving from one state to the other. So they've got to reorder these and get them in the correct order. Bit on the water cycle, and then a question on scratch coding and an explanation there. Adding another question in is exactly the same way. So you press add new there, and the responses then would come in over here. And today there's no responses, but the preview looks a little bit like this. So I've just chosen a Microsoft background. Because I've got branching, I only see question 1. I find that beneficial when I'm using this with pupils or students, because it means that they don't get daunted by the sheer volume of questions that they see before them. And then when they've answered that question 1, they will either jump to number 2 in the original order that I had it, or they will just go to number 3. But actually for them, in reality, number 3 is numbered number 2, because for them, they've just skipped the original number 2 that I put in there, and they don't even know it exists, and they don't need to know it exists, because as far as I'm concerned, their answer to this meant that their learning was secure enough that they didn't need to go visit question 2. In here again is Immersive Reader, so you've got that available in your classroom, and it's a tool that will benefit pupils greatly. As you can see, it's hover over anything, it comes up, so wherever you can use it, it's there for you. Just like before, if you're using this on a tablet device, it will scale, so there's no problem at all within school. If you happen to design this on a computer and that's where you're planning it from, and you've only got a set of Android tablets or a set of iPads or something in class, no problem. Forms will take care of that for you. So it's pretty much a whistle-stop tour of Forms to give you a flavour of what it can achieve and what it can do. But are there any questions at this point about Forms or anything that I've shown you, or even just sharing what you've tried to achieve in your own classroom or your own teaching? See, Mark is just typing something. Thanks, Mark. I find it is. I think if it was one of my absolute go-to apps in the M365 suite, it's Forms. I find so many different uses for it. Don't use it every day, but I would say I would use it most weeks in some shape or form. And again, it does lend itself to certain subjects a little easier than other. But even I've seen people that are teaching things like maths and drama create forms for their subjects, and they've used very visual elements, pictures and videos, like I've shown you in the quiz. It doesn't have to be that it involves calculations. Yeah, I say that real-time collation of data is a real game changer. It means I don't have to go in, recalculate everything every time, and that audit trail, that accountability is just so powerful. I've been sat in leadership meetings before, and the questions come, well, how secure were they at the end of the unit in maths or English or something like that? And I go, well, okay, let's have a look. Well, this was a summary for my class, and you pull up the dashboard with the graphs and so forth. Or let's break it down. We want to have some deeper investigation, a low ability, middle ability, and high ability pupil. Just exactly how did they respond? Well, I can then go look at the individual results, and it's all there for me. I don't have to worry about going and then crunching that separately. So Forms for me, when I first discovered it, was a game changer, and it still remains one of my favorite apps. If you're going to put your application together for the MIE, and I know not everyone is intending to, and some people are coming to the sessions just to see what's happening, but if you are putting it together, do put something in about forms. Get a few screenshots. Just make sure you don't include any pupil names for GDPR reasons, so make sure they're blanked out, but definitely put something in about forms, whether it's using it as an app on its own or whether you're embedding it into Teams. Whichever way, get it in there. So next we'll go over and have a look at Sway and how that can be used to make presentations, and before we come back to bring everything together at the end. So let's jump into Sway. When you open up Sway from the app launcher, you will arrive at a view that looks like this. Along the top, you've got some suggested templates. That can really be based on many things. What's flavor of the month or what you've been doing previously. Same as forms. Anything you've used recently as a Sway will be here. Any pinned Sways you can have here. With forms, it's one of those apps that's universal across a school. I know Nick last week said that he wasn't absolutely smitten with Sway, and it is definitely a Marmite thing. Some people love it because it takes care of certain decisions they don't need to get bogged down in, and other people hate it because they want some more control and it takes a bit of time to go and change things. But make up your own mind after we've gone through it today. Feature Sways down the bottom here are normally around topical events or months of the year. If you want to get to all of your Sway, just like with your forms, you simply scroll across the bottom there and you will then see a full list of your Sways, but it does take you to a different tab and a different view, which is confusing at first. And I wish there was just a single landing page. So down here, I can see ones that are edited, or I can see ones that I've viewed. The other thing that you've got here that you don't have on the previous page is I can get analytics. If that loads up for Sways that I've shared that have been publicly used, I'll be able to see, for instance, how long people spent on a certain page. I don't think it's going to work for me today. Let's retry that. Or whether there was a certain aspect that people seem to prefer more. So a lot of the same functions apart from analytics are over here, but I'm just going to duck back over to the other tab. As I said, I find this universal across the school in its use. It could be the admin team creating a school newsletter, and I do have a lot of school newsletters a lot of admin teams that are using this as a school newsletter. I've used it in class in many different ways in all educational phases for pupils to not have to worry about the technicality of building something. They can just throw content into Sway, and Sway takes care of putting it together in a pleasing way. So if I'm not interested in their technical ability to construct a presentation, then I tend to go to Sway for that reason, because I don't get lost learning time fiddling around with fonts or creating slides. Just does it for me. So if I looked at something such as a science club newsletter, maybe I'm a teacher running a science club after school, and in that science club here now, talking about the technical aspects of Sway, you get a storyline, and the storyline here is vertical. I'm going from top to bottom and I'm adding new content in. Each of these rectangles are called a card. Where you get a break in between, it starts a new card and you can couch new cards inside of them. A bit like building Lego bricks. The very first outside card is the foundation, and then more of them stack up on top. The cards can have many different features, and to add a new card, you press the plus button. So if I go down to the very last card that I've got in this sequence, what I did some wow science here last time we were in, if I click on it, I get the plus button there, and what you will have are some suggested next cards based on the previous one, but you can ignore the suggestions if you wish, and they are broken up into text. So you can have a main heading, that's called a heading 1, or a subheading, which is a heading 2, or just a text box on its own. You can also add media into a Sway, so you can have static stills images, or you can have live video, you can have audio recordings, you can embed websites, or you can upload files. And then if you're using images, you can group them so they're automatically shifted depending on size and ratio. You can have a grid of thumbnails, you can have comparisons and stacks, or you can have a slideshow of them, and I'll show you what they all look like in a minute. So this is for an imaginary science club that I'm running after school. Here is the button, which is the play button, where I view what that looks like. So those cards, this is how it would appear for somebody receiving it. Scroll down, got my subheadings coming in from the side. This is an example of a stack of photographs, so I can skim through them. I've only got 2 in that stack, a bit like traditional printed photographs, and I'm leafing through them. Here is an example of where it's organized them in a grid. My new building has one of my compare aspects. So this was the original building where we were holding our science club, but wow, the PTA have stumped up an awful lot of money and they've built me a new building so I can compare and contrast the facilities we might have. Then I've got experiments this term with a video embedded for the parents to play, and we're going to look at making slime and edible rocks and explosions. Got my wow science. I've probably got an overemphasized picture there, so I'll go back in a minute and show you. Then I'm going to do something called flaming hands with them, and I've got some pictures of what that looked like from previous years when I've been doing it with other students and also the staff. So this science newsletter is far more engaging than providing a PDF or a PowerPoint or maybe using Publisher. It's another way of bringing it to life. And as you can see, even the stills pictures in the background have a pan and scan element to them. When I want to get back, I can click edit, but if I've shared it to somebody else, they wouldn't see the edit button. They would just be able to view it and scroll through it. So I decided in the cards that I had here, I've got the title Wow Science. If I wanted that to stand out and become bold, I might emphasize it. So that's the same as bold. I could have it in italics as well, so I'm going to pop that in italics there. Wanted to add a link to another resource externally, I can do that here. Here is my picture, and I can break that down to have a look at the picture I've got in there. And I might want to change the focus points on that picture. So I could say it's the image in its entirety, or I might untick that and I actually want a focal point on a part of that picture. So now instead of it being the whole desk, you can see that the preview of it changes there. If I retick it, there's the whole picture. So do you know what? I'm going to untick that. I think it works better, almost getting like a band across the image. But if I want to reset it, it's quite easy. I do that there and then I come out. So adding new cards in is really straightforward, but changing what's in the cards is equally very easy to achieve. If I wanted to add in another picture, I just click on the box on the side. So let's actually do that here. Might say I'm going to add in another box inside of this. So here I might have, let's go to media, an image, and it would be, let's say register now. I want them to get them to sign up. And here, this is where I might find my image. I'm going to click on the image box, and then over here again, just like forms, my pupils don't have to go anywhere else, my staff don't have to go anywhere else. It's all inside. I've got suggested searches based on what the content of the presentation is or the prior boxes, but I might say, look, I just want to go science club and see what I get. Press the search button, and then I toggle between videos and images there. That actually looks like quite a nice image. Please be aware of copyright if you're going to include these, just in case somebody owns it. But in there now, I've got my science club. I've got my register now. That's all looking good. I might go back to play. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and have a look. It appears the dotted lines at the top, which are going past, just means that the sway is loading up. So I'll scroll down as soon as that's loaded. And it's taking longer than I wish. Let's see if I can reload that to speed that up. Let's go around and reload that again. Then when I get to the bottom, I should have something that now looks like a sway that we can use. So have a look if that's going to load or not. Let's go back in and try it. Science Club this term. Up it loads. It's not going to play ball. I'll move into one of the other sways to show you some of the aspects I'm going to show you in here next, but in a different sway itself. No, let's go and try school prospectus. So school prospectus is another way that people are using sways. Instead of having a static document or embedding this into a website so someone can scroll through this. Now, up until now, I've been showing you what it looks like when it's made, and I might go through, and it's welcome to my school. We're a technology hub, and here's a video of what we've been achieving, and there's a picture of the staff in my school doing amazing things in my technology hub school. But you might want to change this. You might want to make it look differently. You could do this as a pupil. You could do this for a newsletter to make it more interesting. So you can go to design instead of storyline, because storyline is where you add your cards and you build your story, but design is where you can change things. On the right hand side, you've got styles. You choose the way it scrolls. So at the moment I'm using vertical, but I could go horizontally, or I could have it appearing as individual slides, for instance, if I wanted to. It's really up to you how you want it to appear, but it will take care of that for you in here. I think I might put that back to vertical. Then on the side, You can decide different fonts and themes, and you can scroll through more over there if you wish. They're instantly applied over the top, or you can apply a whole different theme. So if I click that, I think my broadband is really struggling at the moment for some reason. It will then remix this whole sway here, and if you don't like what you've been given, you press the undo button and it will take you back to the original prospectus, and you don't have to keep the new version. You can go in and break it down, do things such as change the fonts or make sure that it looks exactly how you want it to, but if it's not something that you're interested in, you have to accept that it will make those choices for you. In almost, you're stuck with what it gives you, but as long as what it gives you is somewhat pleasing to what you're after, then don't worry about it too much. The rest of it can be taken care of at a later date, or you can go in and fiddle with those settings. But that's the difference, I would say, between using something like Publisher or PowerPoint, is that Sway will do a lot of that for you, and you almost just have to go with it. And that's what I meant when I said Marmite earlier. It, for some people, it's great. It takes away the burden of having to fiddle around all of those settings, and they can just get on with what they wanted to do. And for other people that like a bit more control, they hate it because it means they've got to almost battle a bit with Sway, and they've got to get it to look exactly how they want. I've almost accepted the fact that Sway will often pick some of the best layouts depending on the content. It's programmed to do that. It analyzes the text, the photos that you're using, the words you're using, and it will pick the most appropriate, so that when you get to play, you can get on with the business of just getting it to do what you want to do, and you haven't got to worry too much about the layout of it. But for an application that just allows you to get on with what you want to do, Sway is it. For sharing, in here, you've got very similar options to forms. You can say that you want it to be shared with specific groups of people and name them. People in your organization or anyone with the link means it's good for external use. You've got a button here that's really important. If you just want people to be able to view it, then make sure you've ticked that. If you want a colleague to be able to edit it, then tick that. Whatever you do, do not tick editing and send it out to parents. Otherwise, you'll find they've gone in and nicely edited your lovely Sway. To get the link, you can press the get link, or you can get an embed code link. The visual link is not QR, it's a picture with a link underneath, but it takes a picture that's relevant to the Sway you've created, and you can click it there. You can as well add a password in, so if you know that this was had pictures of maybe pupils in where you had consent for only using their image in school and not externally, by putting a password on it and then letting the limited audience know what the password is to access the Sway, you've got even more protection. If you don't want people to be able to share further still and maybe send it to another platform, tick the viewers either can share if you want them to have the share button, or untick it if you don't want them to have the share button. If you want to reset all of your settings at the end, just press the button there and it will put everything back to how it was when the Sway was first created. On the side here, you can save as a template. So if this was your newsletter and you led out the basic cards, then that's fine. Save it as a template and reuse it each week, and then use the style options to change its look. You can print it out, although it loses the essence of why you're using a Sway. It's interactive, it's alive, and that's something that you can't express if it's a printed version. You can also export to Word or PDF, and those options are there if you want to get a copy out. But again, you lose the reason why you've decided to use a Sway. There are more settings for Sway over here on the side. So you can choose languages and boxes that are available. You could also choose whether people can duplicate and take a copy of your Sway, or whether you don't want them to be able to do that, and whether you want certain information to be available in the footer at the bottom of the Sway, or whether people can change the layout. You could also enforce that it plays automatically after a certain amount of time if you toggle that on, and then when they open up the Sway, you can say after 10 seconds it starts to move down the storyline, so they don't even have to scroll themselves. That's also really useful for things like an open evening if you've got a Sway on display in school and you just want it to keep going around on a loop, or you want it to manage itself. So as you can see there are lots of different features in Sway that you're going to need to harness when you're building your application, but you can do things such as you could put a Sway in a Sway. So if you made a Sway for something you're doing in class, or pupils have made Sways in your lesson, you can add a Sway into the Sway as another object, and you can scroll through it there. And the example I shared when we had Nick on last time, there was a person that had done just that. So sways themselves are pretty versatile in how they work. Some of the features in the sway are now being added into things like Word. There is a question mark, I think Nick articulated that, otherwise sway will remain. At the moment, I've seen absolutely nothing about Microsoft removing it as a product from M365. So I would advise you go in and have a go with it. You're going to need to use it if you've decided that's your vehicle to submit your MIEE application. Any questions at all on sways before we move back across to the presentation itself? No? Okay. I'll swap screens over a moment. I'll pop the slides into the team later on today so you can pick it up. But what I've done is for both forms and sway, I've given you a link to a couple of courses on the MEC. If it's something you're interested in and you want to go and get accreditation for it for your own professional development, or you're just interested a little bit more about, for instance, creating authentic assessments, there are courses in the MEC. I've also given you links to the forms site where you can go and find lots of FAQs and support documents and resources. The same is mirrored there with sway. We got a couple of MEC courses to explore how to use sway in school, and then getting started with sway and the help center for sway, just to make sure you're supported. As far as our journey and our sessions are concerned, yesterday was the showcase event. So today we looked at using sway for engaging presentations and also collection and analysis of data and forms. We've got one more session left, and that's going to focus on Minecraft education. There's a little bit of a gap where we'll pick up again on the 11th of May, where we'll look at how Minecraft can be used across the whole curriculum. And one thing to flag to you, if you want to get the most out of that session, try to get Minecraft Education Edition installed on your device prior to that session. It'll mean that you can have a little go with some of the things that we're looking at. It'll be far better for you than just watching what I'm doing on screen all the time. So it's one of those things, if you know your device is managed by IT technicians in your school, then do go and get that sorted prior to May the 11th. And make sure you've got it available to you. We are still posting on social media, as are Microsoft. Mike Dawson has posted huge amounts in the last 2 weeks, so I'd advise going and finding him and seeing all of the exciting developments. A lot recently about Teams, OneNote Class Notebook, and accessibility tools. If you've got any questions and you want to get in contact with us, we're always available on office@turniton.co.uk. I'll pop the evaluation form into the channel a little bit later, but don't forget you can always go and pick up our recordings on the YouTube channel, and Tiana will pop some more of those into the team. And then I still get questions quite regularly in between these sessions about what Turniton can do to help your school if you don't have us in for other services. We've got lots of different services we offer, from tech support right away through to GDPR, MIS, and we also cover project management. So anything you want to talk to us about, feel free to contact us again on office@turniton. So for me, really, it's open now for questions, anything you'd like to discuss with me, and I'll stop the recording at this point in case you just want to ask it and not be recorded.